Part 1.
You will hear a woman, Paula, phoning her friend Ralph about an application to the local council for money for their drama club. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 3. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 3.
Hello?
Ralph, it's Paula.
Hi.
You know I told you we could apply to the local council for money for our drama club? I've got the application form here, but we need to get it back to them by the end of the week. I could send it on to you. You really ought to fill it in as president of the club, but I don't know if it'll get to you in time.
Well, you're the secretary, so I expect it's okay if you fill it in.
Yeah, but I'd really like to check it together.
Right, that's fine.
Like, the first part asks for the main contact person. Can I put you there?
Sure.
Right, so that's Ralph Pearson. Oh, and then I need your contact address. So that's 203 South Road, isn't it?
No, 230.
Oh, sorry, I always get that wrong. Then it's Drayton. Oh, do you think they need a postcode?
Better put it, it's DR6 8AB.
Okay. Telephone number, that's 01453 586 098, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. Now, in the next part of the form, I have to give information about our group. So, name of group, that's easy. We're the Community Youth Theatre Group. But then I have to describe it. So, what sort of information do you think they want?
Well, they need to know we're amateurs, not professional actors. And how many members we've got. What's that at present, 20?
18. And should we put in the age range, that's 13 to 22?
No, I don't think we need to. But we'd better put a bit about what we actually do. Something like members take part in drama activities.
Activities and workshops?
Okay.
Right. That's all for that section, I think.
You now have some time to look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 4 to 10.
Now, the next bit is about the project itself, what we're applying for funding for. So, first of all, they need to know how much money we want. The maximum's £500.
I think we agreed we'd ask for 250, didn't we?
Okay. There's no point in asking for too much. We'll have less chance of getting it. Then we need to say what the project, the activity is.
Right. So we could write something like, to produce a short play for young children.
Should we say it's interactive?
Yes, good idea.
Right, I've got that. Then we have to say what we actually need the money for.
Isn't that it?
No, we have to give a breakdown of details, I think.
Well, there's the scenery.
But we're making that.
We need to buy the materials, though.
Oh, okay. Then there's the costumes.
Right. That's going to be at least £50.
Okay. And what else? Oh, I just found out we have to have insurance. I don't think it'll cost much, but we need to get it organised.
Yes, I'd forgotten about that. And we could be breaking the law if we don't have it. Good thing we've already got curtains in the hall. At least we don't have to worry about that.
We'll need some money for publicity. Otherwise, no one will know what we're doing.
And then a bit of money for unexpected things that come up. Just put sundries at the end of the list.
Okay, fine. Now, the next thing they want to know is if they give us the grant, how they'll be credited.
What do they mean, credited?
I think they mean how we'll let the public know that they funded us. They want people to know they've supported us. It looks good for them.
Well, we could say we'd announce it at the end of the play. We could make a speech or something.
They might prefer to see something in writing. We'll be giving the audience a programme, won't we? So we could put an acknowledgement in that?
Yeah, that's a better idea.
Okay, and the last thing they want to know is if we've approached any other organisations for funding and what the outcome was.
Well, only National Youth Services, and they said that at present funds were not available for arts projects.
Right, I'll put that. And then I think that's it. I'll get that in the post straight away. I really hope we get the money.
I think we've got a pretty good chance. Hope so anyway. Thanks for doing all this, Paula.
That's okay. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You're going to listen to a talk about the food we eat.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Welcome to The Food We Eat, sponsored by Safeway. Increasingly, we know more about the effects of our eating habits and lifestyles on our health. While new information can change old ideas, the news stories can often be confusing. At Safeway, we try to help customers not only in the range and types of food offered, but also by providing up-to-date, reliable information in areas we know are of interest and which relate to the diet we eat. Today, we are going to talk about sugar. Recently, doctors have been advising us to eat less sugar. The health recommendation to use less sugar is for 2 reasons. Firstly, for the sake of our teeth, since the amount and frequency of sugar consumption links to decay. Secondly, as sugar is a good source of calories, it can easily be a problem if we tend to be overweight. The dental risk is because bacteria which occur naturally in our mouth feed on carbohydrates, sugar and starch, to form plaque and acid. Plaque is a sticky coating that prevents the bacteria being removed by saliva. The acid attacks the tooth itself. This takes time, however, so the trick is to avoid sticky foods like sweets, which stay around in crevices feeding the bacteria.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Regular brushing, preferably with a fluoride toothpaste, helps remove particles and resist acid. The worst thing you can do is nibble sweet things between meals. It puts your teeth under constant attack. A sweet tooth develops gradually, and you might be surprised at how you can steadily unlearn the taste, taking in fewer calories and saving your teeth. Here's some ways. A. Gradually cut down the sugar in tea and coffee till you can stop altogether or switch to sweeteners. B. Choose snacks with a lower sugar content. Fresh fruit, raw vegetables, crackers, milk or low-fat natural yogurt. Remember, some fruits like raisins have lots of sugar. C. Look for reduced sugar alternatives. There are more and more around, from diet drinks to yogurts, even jams and sauces. D. Try gradually to cut back on the sugar you use in cooking, especially in baking.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You hear a club leader giving information to a group of young people who are planning to do a 2-week holiday course at the Tamerton Centre.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, everyone. I've been asked to talk to you this afternoon about next month's trip to Tamerton Study Center for the 2-week course. Now, some of the things I'm going to say you may have already heard or read about, but I think it's important to emphasize a few key points. First of all, it's worth reminding you why Tamerton was set up in the first place, in the late 1960s. That was really before all the concern with preserving the environment, which everyone talks about these days. The idea was simply to get people out of the cities and into the country, and to find out that just being outdoors can be very rewarding. This is not going to be a holiday in the usual sense. It's called an adventure course because you'll really be stretched to your limits, but that in itself can be a positive thing. The group I took last year, for example, said that although they actually felt pretty weak and exhausted all the time, it really made them learn a lot about themselves and increased their confidence. And in the end, that's the most important thing. Now, all of you knew about policies at Tamerton before you signed up for it, so you know that in many ways it's quite old-fashioned. You don't have a lot of choice in what you do. But something which I think makes the place so special is that you get to try so many different things every day. For instance, one day you'll do climbing, and the next you'll be surveying rock pools. It's not intended that you become an expert in any of them. It's more like a taster, which you can follow up if you want. And there isn't a lot of free time. Organized activities and talks, etc., go on until 9 p.m., and lights go out at 11 p.m. There are table tennis tables with all the equipment and board games, though I have to say the pieces often go missing, so it's a good idea to take your own. There's a DVD player with a good selection of films suitable for this age group, so don't take yours. Bedtime at 11 p.m. is strictly enforced, and there's a good reason for this. You're all under 18, and we organizers need to know that all group members are accounted for in the house as we close for the night. And of course, you'll be so exhausted anyway that you'll be too sleepy to want to cause any trouble.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Now, what should you pack? The information sheet tells you a lot about what clothing to bring. But what about other things? Well, Tamerton House has its own small shop, but anything there is several miles away, so you won't have many opportunities for buying supplies. So in this last part of my talk, I'm going to explain what objects you should take with you to the center, what you can take if you want, and also, very importantly, what you cannot take. Several of you came up to me before this talk and asked whether you can take things like kettles or hair dryers. The answer is there are plenty of these electrical appliances available in the center, and they are of the proper voltage and are checked regularly. Yours may not be, so the rules at Tamerton say you can't bring them into the center because it's considered a fire risk. Remember, it's a very old house. Now, another question was about cell phones. Although you definitely can't have them on during inside talks, you equally definitely need them when you're out on exercises. So they're a must, I'm afraid. Anybody who wishes to talk to me about borrowing a phone for the fortnight, please see me after this talk. Now, the weather's heating up at the moment, and you'll be outdoors a great deal. If you wear proper clothing, especially a hat, sun cream is optional. Also, they sell high-factor cream in the shop, so you don't have to take any of your own unless there's a special kind you use. Now, there's a special note about things like deodorants, which come in aerosol cans. I need to tell you that these are banned in the center because apparently they have the habit of setting off the fire alarms. If you want to take an aerosol can, you'll actually be at risk of being told to leave. And finally, people have been asking about whether they need to take towels. Well, the center does provide 1 towel per guest, which you're required to wash yourself. If you're happy with that, then don't bring another. If not, take one of your own. Just remember how much outdoor exercise you'll be doing and how dirty and wet you'll be getting.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
Fine. Listen to the second part of our lecture.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Riverdance is not just an expression of self-confidence, a kind of culturally interesting pop song. It tells the story of a people through song and dance. It tells the story of the people whose spirit was broken by an event which occurred in the middle of the last century, but continued to affect the society until 1961, the Great Famine. What is a famine? In 1840, the official population of Ireland was 8 million. They were largely poor and living in the countryside. They were beginning to have an interest in independence, and perhaps had things been different, Ireland might have been independent much earlier. But there was a serious problem in the agricultural system. All crops were grown to pay the rent of the land, and all that was grown to eat was the potato. This was fine until the potato crop failed, as it did from 1845 to 1848. The stories of what happened in those times live on in the popular culture of Ireland, and I won't tell them here, but the result was that 2 million people died or left the country by 1851. When you realise that the population continued to go down until 1961, you can realise what a disastrous effect this famine had on the people. Compared with China, imagine if the famine of 1960 reduced the population by a quarter and it kept falling to less than half of its pre-famine figure. Anybody with ideas left and went to England, America or Australia. The people left behind were broken by their experiences and, in effect, the famine and its consequences put an end to all serious development in the country until well into this century. The Irish in Ireland lost all hope and self-confidence, and much of our modern culture is about the sadness of that time and the sorrow of saying goodbye to those who left and left well into this century. Ireland has the highest emigration rate of any country in Europe for the last 2 centuries. We even have an expression for this saying goodbye. It is called the American wake. It means the ceremony, like that of a funeral for someone going to America, because you will never see him or her again. Do you know why there is Irish music on the film Titanic? It is because most of the people killed were Irish. The leaving continued until the 1970s because independence in 1921 was followed by a civil war and an economic depression. Almost every family in Ireland has relatives abroad, and up to the 60s in some places, of a class of 30 graduating from high school all left. Along the west coast, closed-up houses from that time falling into ruin are still common.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Come on.